this what the party should look like?
Yes.
The Democratic Party moving.
You bet.
That was Senator Elizabeth Warren campaigning with New York City Democratic mayoral nominee Zohran Mamdani hours before she unleashed on CNBC host David Faber while defending Mamdani's policies. He questioned the Democratic Socialist desire to create affordable housing by taxing New York City millionaires and billionaires. Take a look.
Saying, so I want people to be able to afford to live in New York City. That's what keeps it a vibrant city. That's what makes people want to live
Nobody
here.
disagrees with that, Senator, but raising taxes in order to do it?
Oh,
why is that
goodness.
the answer?
Oh, dear. Are you worried that billionaires are going to go hungry?
No, I'm worried that they're going to leave and spend their money elsewhere.
You know, they've threatened to do that over and over and over.
And they have. This is not an issue that just here in New York. It's everywhere.
But it's not an issue that Eric Adams was fighting for. It's certainly not an issue that Andrew
I think the mayor would say they have been trying to focus on building as many new.
Warren also weighed in on President Trump's firing of Bureau of Labour Statistics Commissioner Erica McIntyre. Let's watch that.
You get bad data, you kill the messenger, right? And that's Donald Trump, because he thinks he can bend reality. If he can just tell a different story, then everyone will have to believe his story.
Trump took to Truth Social, railing against Warren over her comments, posting, quote, "In just 6 months, I cut costs, especially energy and taxes, tremendously." Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren on CNBC said costs have gone up. She is just angry that I blew up her terrible presidential campaign. Call her out. Elizabeth Warren is a loser. She lies about everything, including the fact that she is an Indian. She's not. She's no Pocahontas. Ask Pocahontas the real questions, CNBC. He really loves that dig, Niall.
He really does love that dig, although he seems to really hate being called out on the firing of the BLS commissioner, which was, I mean, I did whole notes about it yesterday.
I agreed with you on it.
You did?
That one I don't like.
And that was very, a clear attempt, I think, to just hit back or take revenge against facts that he didn't like.
But on Trump versus Elizabeth Warren, so Elizabeth Warren is not only not my favorite political actor, but just about my least favorite.
We have a divide again, Robby.
Not only, and it's not really, in some ways that is a credit to her. I think she is almost the perfect ideological representative of not my ideology. It's not just that I dislike her, I fear her in power. She would be my most feared person to run the country in a way that is maximally against my way of thinking. However, I will say, I was informed yesterday, I was reading somebody's Substack, maybe it was Matt Iglesias's, and apparently she does have some kind of bill related to housing on the abundance agenda that is not objectionable to me, that is about making it easier to build more housing. Because that is, in my view, and I guess in Elizabeth Warren's, in this way, that's a good thing. The answer to inflated housing prices is the shortage of housing. You need to do reform so you can build more units to stop the cost from going up so much. I think that's the solution, and I would love Democrats to work on that. And if Elizabeth Warren wants to work on that, that's great. The solution I don't like is just that we can tax our way out of every problem. And, she was doing, boo-hoo for billionaires. Well, to that guy's point, I mean, if you do tax very wealthy people up to a certain level, there is a certain amount that they're willing to stay in New York because they like New York. But we do see wealthy people moving to Florida and to Texas in the tech sector, even though being in Seattle and Silicon Valley is more beneficial. There's a rate at which they all go to Austin. And if she wants to do that to New York, that's her problem.
So let me begin with a forceful defense of Elizabeth Warren, who I think is an excellent political figure, very much part of what I think would be a much better direction for the country. I regret that she did not do better when she ran for the Democratic nomination in 2020. I thought she would have made for an excellent nominee. I don't actually get the idea, which is common, I think, on the right and among people who dislike her generally, that she talks down to people. I mean, I get that she was a professor at Harvard Law School, if I'm remembering correctly.
She comes across as elitist.
I think she does. I don't agree with that. I don't see that in her. And she has actually had quite a tough life at times herself in terms of her upbringing, and she separated from her then husband when she had a kid, and she's not someone who has been without hardship in her own life. Now, in relation to the billionaires comment, firstly, I laughed when she said it and laughed again when we replayed it. I think that is a perfectly valid point to make. I also think that the media in this country, primarily being owned by wealthy people by its nature, tends to marginalize those kind of critiques or criticisms. It is rare that you hear someone being mocked for the kind of view that David Faber put forward, and I'm glad that Elizabeth Warren did some mocking of it. Look, briefly on the general point about taxation, of course there's an optimal level of taxation. Of course there are levels that can disinhibit growth.
There's levels where you actually take in less revenue because then people make less money or they leave the municipality.
Right, but I think that, and the libertarian point of view would be that you would just reduce taxes to almost nothing, which I think would have the effect of both disadvantaging people who already face severe disadvantage in their lives and would simply empower the super wealthy. It would empower a plutocracy, essentially.
Well, let's say New York City, let's say it confiscates more wealth from successful people and does what with it? And builds affordable housing?
Well, I mean, in Zohran Mamdani's case, one of his recommendations is for universal childcare from the ages of 6 months until 5 years old. Now, I would argue that that is a useful thing in terms of its social function. I would also argue it's a very useful thing in terms of the overall economic good of the city, because if you provide that childcare, you then free mothers and fathers to work without having to have the disincentive that their earnings are going to be stripped out for childcare.
I don't think people who don't have children should have to pay for childcare for other people. I think people who have children should pay it, but I'd like to make it cheaper for them.
Do you think that people who don't have children should pay taxes for education?
No.
So somebody who doesn't have a child should not have any, there is no societal benefit to their taxes going toward education?
No.
Really?
I would make you the person who, for universal school choice and privatized education. If you want to get philosophical here, I think
public education at all. You're against public education.
Yeah, I think the point of the government is to provide some small number of services, police and defense and courts and those things, and everything else is not prescribed by our Constitution, actually.
I can't believe that sometimes our friends on the right in the comment section think you're too moderate. And here you are coming out against public education, as if society has no collective interest in educating the population.
Education can be a good thing, but it can be arrived at via the market process. It doesn't need to be subsidized by the government. Everything subsidized by the government gets more expensive and gets worse in quality. The government spends massive amounts of money on education. In the entire history of the Department of Education, since it came into existence, since we created a centralized bureaucracy and spent more and more money on education, reading and math scores have not increased at all. In fact, they've fallen.
Robby, education is the primary ladder out of generational poverty, with all the problems that come from that, not only to the impoverished person, but to the broader society in which they reside.
I'm not saying make education illegal. I'm saying, should the government throw massive amounts of money at this thing? Does that make it better? And does that result in it being provided better and more efficiently to more people? The answer for most things is no. This is true for food. This is true for consumer goods. This is true for so much of the best things in your life, the things that you like and that can be delivered by the market effectively, efficiently. They're not, the less the government has to do with them, the better it is. That's my libertarian case for you.
DHS under fire for an apparent FEMA policy regarding emergency funds in Israel, but it appears that they have changed that policy at the last minute. Stay with us.